Hi everybody, this is going to be a video about my modified Thinkway karate action Buzz Lightyear. If I'm a bit difficult to understand, I apologize. I just had some dental work done and my face is still swollen. I will make these videos when I have enough free time to do so, and currently I do at the moment, so I'm going to go ahead and make a video now. As with any of the videos I show I finished modified Buzz, I'll always show a unmodified version first, so that way it gives more clarity to the mods that I've done. Like I said, this is a karate action Buzz. He was first released in 2009 and then released once or twice, I think, after that. This is not to be confused with the Toy Story 4 karate chop action Buzz. I'm going to do a quick comparison between that Buzz and this Buzz before I move on to his posability and features. So this is the Toy Story 4 release. As typical with any of the Toy Story 4 releases, he omits a lot of details and features. So he has no helmet. The collar plate up here is supposed to be gray. It's white. The fake buttons for the helmet are supposed to be purple. Clearly they're not. They're green. Posability in his left arm is not great. So the shoulder joint is just a semi-sphere, not a ball joint. So it does move up and down and only rotates. Elbow joint does not function. The wrist does rotate. The hand is molded in the shape of a fist and is missing paint. As far as the right arm, this is his karate chop arm. His shoulder joint is not a ball joint, so it can only rotate. It does not move up and down. The elbow joint does not function. The wrist does rotate. The hand does not have any posable fingers. It is fixed in this chopping position. It does not have a laser, and they didn't even bother to paint what's supposed to be the laser. Range of motion for his shoulder is very limited too, so this is the maximum range of motion for that shoulder. The waist does rotate. It will rotate 360 degrees. The legs are typical for the Toy Story 4 releases. There is no posability, no hip joints, no knee joints, and no ankle joints. They didn't even bother to paint the back of the knees to make it look like it should. They didn't bother to paint the back of the boots either. His jetpack looks a bit strange because there's this large hole near the top. That is an attachment point for an anchor that would hold him in place in his retail packaging. He does not have wings, and they didn't even bother to make a decent effort to make it look like he should have wings. It's missing a lot of paint back here as well, so this entire area should be gray, and the ports themselves should be red. This should be a sticker rather than a molded piece. Yeah, that's not great. So as far as his features, the only feature that he has is this karate chop action. There's no button to press to initiate this. The way you do it is you lift the arm and let it go. That is it. There is a return spring in there that will pull the arm down a slight bit more force than gravity, but yeah, it's not super great. And like I said, no laser. He doesn't talk. Obviously, the wing button doesn't work because he has no wings. I think one of his only redeeming qualities, or actually the only redeeming quality, is the head sculpt. I like the closed mouth head sculpt that Thinkway used for this guy. That's it. This is the karate action Buzz Lightyear. He was first released in 2009, and then I think he was released once or twice again after that. That was obviously before the Toy Story 4 karate chop action Buzz. I'll go over his posability and his features. So posability is actually fairly decent for him. It is limited in some places and is actually better than comparable karate chop Buzzes in others. So firstly, he does have a helmet. It can open and close. His head is not traditionally posable, so you can't just turn it from side to side because that head is attached to the karate chop mechanism inside of his body. Posability for the left arm is like a typical Buzz, so the shoulder is a ball joint, moves up and down and rotates. His elbow joint does bend. The wrist does rotate. The fingers do open and close. They are all molded together like a traditional Buzz and not like a collection Buzz. Now the right arm is actually where his posability is better than other Buzzes that have karate chop action. So his shoulder joint is a ball joint. and it can be posed in any position like a normal ball jointed shoulder. His elbow joint does function on the right side. The wrist does rotate. The fingers do open and close. They are all molded together. Obviously, both hands are painted as they should be. He does not have a laser, but they at least bothered to paint what should be the laser. The waist does rotate. It is difficult to move for whatever reason. The legs do have limited posability, so he does have ball jointed hip joints. The knee joints do not function. They at least bothered to paint the back of the knees to make it look like they should function. The feet are separate parts from the legs. As you can see, they can move a little bit, but they're not meant to, so I wouldn't pull on those too hard. But they at least bothered to, paint them and all that. The jetpack is one of the reasons why I like this guy and this whole figure. So the jetpack looks movie accurate as far as its size. He does not have wings, but they did make it look like he should have wings and that they're in their closed position. He does have paint where it should be, so this entire area down here is gray. The ports themselves are red. The turbine sticker and the danger jet exhaust stickers do not come on this guy. It's something I added after the fact because it looked bare. Like I said, I like the fact that his jetpack is as thin as it is. If you see any other Buzz Lightyear from Thinkway that does have functional wings, the jetpack is super thick. So this is just a normal Buzz. Thinkway's collection Buzz Lightyear jetpacks are even thicker than that. I'm not going to bother to go grab one, but take my word for it, they're even thicker than this. This thinner jetpack is far more movie accurate as far as the way that looks. So, like I said, he does have karate chop action, and the way this works is the way it should work, like it does in the movie. Sorry, I'm posing his arm in the position it needs to be. This entire purple turbine housing acts as a button, just like it does in the movie, which initiates his karate chop action. His head also rotates to look in that direction. That is the appeal as far as this guy, that movie accurate button. If you look at another example of a Buzz that has a karate chop action, which would be a Disney Store Buzz, there is very limited posability in his arm. So it does rotate at the elbow, or I'm sorry, bend at the elbows, and his hand does have some posability, but the shoulder does not move like a traditional ball joint. It does not move up and down. It will rotate, but you can't just pose it in any position. It's either going to be down and locked like it is now, or if you release the lock, the hand comes up. Press the button, which activates his chopping motion, but there's really no posability there. So it's impressive that Thinkway was able to actually get full posability in this arm while still having a karate chop action. And the way that they did that is his mechanism is connected to his shoulder joint with a slip joint. And I think I have a photo of that. Yeah. Bear with me. So this is a photo of the inside of, not this one, but the one I've modified. This is not a modified, this was the factory slip joint. However, my modified slip joint looks way different than this. But the way this works is you have this gearbox over here and the buttons attached to the back of it. Basically, it turns your linear motion, pushing the button in and out, to a rotating motion with a couple of gears here. And that rotates this shaft, which is connected to his shoulder through this slip joint. And the way the slip joint works is they're actually two separate pieces, and through the middle of that is a metal rod. At each end of that rod is a flat spot, so it looks like the head of a nail. On this side, specifically, between what looks like a nail, the flat spot, and the outside of this joint, there is a small spring, and that's to provide some pinching pressure to keep the two pieces together and provide more friction in between the two separate slip joint pieces. Sorry, I'm not really showing that very well. In between the two separate pieces, so this piece is connected to the gearbox and this part is connected to the shoulder. It rotates and is anchored with this anchor here. In between there is a nylon washer, and as you can see on one side there are serrations. That is to provide an additional bit of friction, so when you push the button, these two pieces are held together tight enough between the spring and the serrations on that nylon washer to move his whole arm. But that does mean that these pieces can actually rotate freely from each other if need be, which is why he can move his arm in a full 360 degrees. Obviously that can be done as well because he doesn't have any electronics. Like I said, no laser, doesn't talk. Obviously the wing button doesn't work. But it is still a fairly movie accurate looking buzz, and he does have the full button in the back, which is neat. Pardon me. So this is my modified karate action buzz. Initially he doesn't look any different. That's sort of one of the points. If you look at them side by side, there isn't much in the way of any kind of visual differences other than this is obviously painted and that is obviously a transparent piece of plastic. The legs on this guy are different, so there's some additional screw holes on the original legs where those are not present on the legs that I swapped onto this one. I'll go over his posability. Helmet still opens and closes. Head is still attached to the karate chop mechanism, so you can't just freely rotate it. His left arm has been unchanged, so it's still a ball joint at the shoulder. Elbow joint still bends, excuse me. The wrist rotates, the fingers still open and close. His karate chop arm still functions like it should. Ball joint up and down, rotates. Elbow joint bends. Rotating wrist, fingers that move. The waist still rotates as it should. The legs are from a different buzz, and the reason why I did that is because of the poor posability of the original legs. So these legs do have a ball joint in the hips, do have a ratcheting knee joint, and the knee joints also rotate. Does have ratcheting ankle joints. These legs are from a spare a spare Power Blaster buzz. So there really isn't much of a, I guess I wouldn't really call it a modification, but more like a part swap. There really isn't any modification required to attach these legs. It's just a part swap, but it does improve his overall posability. The real modifications came in the form of his karate chop arm and then the electronics I put inside of him. So as far as the back, it's just the same as the other one. I added stickers as well. I'm going to demonstrate his karate chop function real quick, and then I'll get on to the mods. So this is to show that the karate chop action still functions as it should. Head still moves. Now the modifications, he does have a working laser. And he does talk.
This galaxy needs my protection. Buzz Lightyear, to the rescue! I'm Buzz Lightyear, Space Ranger. I come in peace. I protect the galaxy from the threat of invasion.
So you might notice that it's fairly quiet, and the reason for that is, although the speaker is inside and pointed in the correct direction, there are no speaker ports on the bottom of his chest like a typical talking buzz. What I mean by that is if you look at the bottom of a buzz that was meant to talk, you can see there are holes to allow the sound to pass through. That is not present on this guy because he was never meant to talk in the first place. I am thinking about modifying the chest plate in such a way that he can talk or that you can hear the sound a little better, but I'm going to do it, I think, between the waist and his chest so you can't really see the holes that I'm going to put in there. I kind of like how this is clean without holes. It's a little louder if you open the helmet.
This is an intergalactic emergency. Buzz Lightyear, to the rescue! I'm Buzz Lightyear, Space Ranger.
So,
Universe Protection Unit.
yeah. So the way that I modified him in order to get the electronics inside, in between the front of his chest and the karate chop mechanism housing, there is basically no space because the housing connects to the front of his chest. So what I had to do is remove some material from the front of that mechanism housing and the back inside of his chest to make some clearance for the PCB, so his circuit board, because the PCB for these talking buzz go behind the buttons and then they protrude over to the center of the chest a little bit here. Over here is where the space needed to be made for clearance to allow me to mount his circuit board. And then as far as the wiring for the laser, I had to build a modified slip joint that would allow me to pass wires through it, and then also come up with a way to limit his range of motion in his shoulder. And what I mean by limiting his range of motion, I mean you can only make so many rotations before it'll stop you, because if you obviously keep rotating it, you're going to damage the wires. I changed the wiring in the arm. I put thicker gauge wiring in there, so it is a bit tougher than the wires that come with these in the factory. They're very thin. In order to limit his range of motion for the entire arm, and this is again the factory slip joint, but if I give some visual, it might make it easier to understand it. On the arm side of the slip joint, mine sticks out a bit further past the mounting point. It's round like this. I drilled a hole on both sides of it, so 180 degrees out from each other, and threaded it for a small screw. And then what I did was I used some small steel cable that you use to hang photos or whatever. And at the end of the cable, I attached an eyelet, a little metal eyelet. So I was able to put the screw through the eyelet and screw it to the rotating part of his shoulder joint. And then I wrapped it around 2 full rotations, and then I had some excess, and I chose I guess a default position, if you want to call it, which was his arm the downward whatever, parallel to his body. And then I rotated the arm 1 full rotation and kept track of how much of the cable I was using. And then I attached an eyelet. I cut it, attached an eyelet, and found an anchor point on the inside of his body. I did that in both the clockwise and the counterclockwise rotations. So what will happen is, if you rotate his arm all the way one way or the other in a full rotation, it will bring that cable to its full tautness and will not allow you to go any further. That is to prevent damage to the wiring. It's worked so far. I haven't had any issues. Hopefully it'll hold up. Time will tell. But as of now, it seems to be working just fine. So technically you can make 2 full rotations of the arm if you start from one end of the range of motion to the other. I left enough slack in the wiring, I think, to prevent damage, but like I said, we'll see. Anyway, that is my modified karate action Buzz Lightyear. Please subscribe to the channel, leave comments, let me know what you think or what you would like to see. I do have a lot of different modified Buzz Lightyears, and I may have something that you like. Let me know. Thanks.